Hello and welcome to Hot Topic. I'm Hugh Richards. I'm joined by Councillor Chris Shaw, leader of North East Lincolnshire Council since 2011 and leader with an overall Labour majority of 8 since 2012. The next local authority elections are in a few months' time. Councillor Shaw, welcome on the programme. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you, Hugh.
First of all, the big news this month is the reopening of Grimsby Central Library.
We reopened it on Monday after doing a refurb to give it an extended life while we have a consultation that we've got going at the moment with the public to find out how they want libraries delivering in the future. That consultation still goes well the 31st, so if anybody's not filled it in, it's important to do that. But we wanted to give the library an extension while we found out what the public wanted.
But that extension's cost about £300,000?
It's cost £300,000. We've had to do some repair work that we had to do on the health and safety, like we had to look at asbestos removal, but also the new lighting and the heating. So we had to take some of the floors away, but that's done that because the alternative is we could have spent £8, £6, £7 million on a new library, say, and not knowing what people wanted. So we had to wait till the consultation finished.
But the £300,000 only extends the life of the library for 4 or 5 years.
It does extend it for 4 or 5 years, which gives us time to find out what it is the public actually want. Do they want a central library? Do they want a central library in that spot? Do they want the central library elsewhere within Grimsby Town Centre? It gives us the time to do that. And when you work it out over a period of time, that is fairly good value. The alternative we had that I inherited when I came was a £30 million library project on a site we didn't own. So what we need to is just work our way forward as to what we're going to do. So it's good money, it's to give us a stopgap, extend the life for 3 to 5 years to give us a chance to find out what people actually want out of their library service.
Public consultation, but what would be your preference? You're part of the public as well. Do you want a library there? How important is a library?
Well, I think libraries are important to everybody. Everybody thinks libraries are about books, and of course libraries should be about a lot more. So what we've got to say is, do we have to supply libraries out of a building that we supply them out now? Can't we supply them out of community centres? Could we supply them out of children's centres? Could we do it out of schools? You know, there's lots of other alternatives. Is it that we've got members of the public who say, well, look, we'd rather run our own library rather than you as a council run it. We'd like you to support it, but we'd like to run it. These are all the things that are out there now for the consultation. And when that comes back and we've crunched the numbers on that and we've published that so people can see what the public think, then we'll make a decision. But we'll do it on the decision based on what the people have told us they want out of libraries.
Well, as everything, it all depends on money, and money is tight at the moment. You're, as council leader, recommending to the council a 1.9% rise in council tax this coming year. You've been offered by central government the equivalent of a 1% rise in council tax income if you didn't put up the council tax. You've chosen to put the council tax up and refuse the government offer. Why is that?
Well, the government offers for 2 years, and what it means is we'd have to find this year an extra £500,000 of the cuts, the year after £1 million, year after that £1.5 million. And of course, putting the council tax up by 1.9% is within the legislation that's allowed. I mean, the Chancellor has just increased business rates in North East Lincolnshire by 2%. So it is in line with what government thinking is.
It's in line with what's allowed, but is it in line with what council taxpayers want to pay?
Well, the council taxpayers want us to deliver services. And what we're saying is for a Band A property in North East Lincolnshire, we're going to increase the council tax by 5 pence a day. That's going to mean that your streets get being cleaned, your street lights work, we look after the elderly, we look after young people in social care that we need to look after. We also do education. That's what we're talking about. That brings in £500,000. You know, that is what we're doing. The other way is we have to find that as an extra cut. So we'd have to start looking at cutting street cleaning, cutting street lighting. That's not what the public tell us they want.
But I mean, the council tax brings in only about 13% of the council's revenues, if I'm right in saying that. Do you know what proportion of the people of North East Lincolnshire pay council tax, are liable for council tax?
Actually, that's a figure I've not got to hand, but you know, quite a lot of people pay council tax. It brings in, like I say, about £500,000 a year extra was what the rise will bring us in. You've got to bear in mind, we put that against the fact that 2 years ago, we had a £120 million revenue budget. In 2 years' time, we'll have a £64 million revenue budget. We'll have lost 76 million, which is the majority of our funding. Next year, for the first time, money we're getting elsewhere than from government actually make up the larger part of the council's budget now.
We'll talk about what the money is spent on in a moment, but just to go back to what the council taxpayers' relationship with the council. On average, most households that pay council tax in North East Lincolnshire are paying about £1,000 a year. You've spoken about some of the services that they get in return for that, but is it is that what they get? £1,000 a year for the council taxpayers? What they get in return is street lighting and road cleaning.
Actually, I mean, I could go into it, but the council does something like 423 services. Everything from adult education to social work for the elderly, street lighting, all the other things, street signage and everything. There's loads and loads of services. Far too many for me to sit here and list. We could be here all night. But the thing about it is, we believe we give good value for money. I mean, in fact, we had the taxpayers' lines come in only the other year because we wanted to let them see what we're doing. They say that we're doing a good job under difficult circumstances. Of course, we're looking every day at where we can save more money. We've just reduced our senior management team now down to 3. So we've now got the smallest senior management team of any council in the region. Yorkshire and the Humber, we've got the smallest management team. That's going to drop by another 2 in 2 years' time. So therefore, we are making savings at the top of the tree, not just on services. And what we're doing with services, we've streamlined them. We're taking out management costs so we can still deliver on the ground the services people tell us they want. And last week, we had the shock last week. School transport last week. Our budget's been cut by 84%. We've gone from £139,000 last year as a grant to £82,000 this year as a grant to £13,000 next year as the grant. And that's an 84% reduction, and we've still got to carry on delivering that service. Hence the reason why council tax has got to go up by, like I say, 5 pence a day on a Band A property and just under 7 on a Band D property.
Well, that rather begs the question then, doesn't it, that if now that, for instance, that one service, educational transport, can be provided with so much less money, and it costs, what, only 5 pence on the council tax, why has it previously been so much more expensive to provide the same service?
Because what we're going to have to do, sadly, is make some people won't meet the criteria anymore. And what all that's going to do is that's going to mean that vulnerable families who maybe at the moment send their children to a good school because they want to get a good education because they've got a gifted child, it may well be that they won't be able to afford to send that child there anymore, and that child will have to go to the nearest school, which means that you can have choice in education for your children as long as you can afford to do it. It seems to be the government's mantra. What we're saying is that's wrong. We're going to do what we can. We're going to assist where we can. We want our young people to have a good education.
In a wider issue there, you've spoken about the cuts to senior management and to the central administration of North East Lincolnshire. There's also the prospect, along with the council tax rise, of cuts in council jobs of maybe up to 240 in the next couple of years. Again, if the council can operate and provide services without those 240 jobs, with that slimmed down management, why hasn't it done so before? Well,
we have been. Over the years, we've been thinning down the amount of people that we employ. But a lot of those people, of course, are funded by what they call ring-fence grants. So there were a grant given to the authority to do a certain piece of work, be that working in the community delivering healthcare or something like this. Those grants have been taken away, so therefore there's no money there anymore to fund those people. So it's not the services that we normally would like street cleaning. What we are doing is we're saying, well, where that's funding has been given before as a grant by government to do a service, and that grant's now gone, we can no longer afford to subsidise that out of the council's normal revenue budget. So those people sadly have come to an end of the contracts, and those contracts won't be renewed.
So if those services are no longer being provided by those ring-fenced grants from money from central government, is there an alternative way of supplying those services?
Well, things we're talking to local third sector groups now about how they can help do that. But what we've been told by government is you should not be doing those services. So government don't recognise those services. Government don't understand those services. So government therefore cut the grant, and they're doing it all the time. They're cutting and cutting and cutting and tells us we can do more for less. Local government is the most efficient part of government. The thing is, every day now we see the amount of borrowing by central government going up on a day-by-day basis. And since I've been here with you, no doubt it'll have arisen while I've been on this programme.
Well, on that rather glum thought, I'll have to stop you there for one moment, Councillor Shaw, forgive me. We'll be back. I'll be back with Chris Shaw after this short break. Welcome back. I'm talking to Chris Shaw, Labour leader of North East Lincolnshire Council. Councillor Shaw, we were just talking about the fact that local government is far more efficient than central government, and the fact that the central government's debt and deficit, you've just said, are rising, but the economy seems to be turning round at the moment, and the deficit, the national deficit and debt seem to be being conquered by these austerity policies from central government, which have limited the government available to local governments so severely. Do you think that as the economy recovers, those austerity measures on local government should be relaxed?
What I think at the moment is I think local government is having to find new ways of working, which is what we're doing. So I'm not so sure about them being relaxed, but what I'm saying is that where there's a need, like in this area, for more additional funding to carry on delivering the services we deliver, we may need to do that. The announcement was made on the other day that the jobless figure or the claimant figure is coming down. Well, it is in the South East and in London, but in Yorkshire and the Humber area and in other areas such as Lancashire and areas like that where there's great need, those figures aren't coming down, those figures are staying stubbornly high. Now we're doing our bit as a council by investing investors into the area, by making the area smarter, better, to get people to come here, but government aren't doing enough really to help us do that.
Is there not and this is rather old-fashioned to quote Norman Tebbit, but is there not a point that if there are jobs down in the southeast and there aren't here, the people who are on benefits here should be getting on a train?
The problem with that, it sounds very easy to go and go there, but there's no support mechanism for those people to do that any longer.
Apart from a job?
But you've got to have a job to go to. There's no point going to somewhere like London with no income and nowhere to live. It's a very expensive place to go and visit, never mind live. And I think what we need to do is we're going to need a set of people. If you're going to move to a different part of the country to work and live, here's your support mechanism to do it. But what would be better would be to make more jobs in this area, in this part of the country. One thing, for instance, government could do it, look at moving out some of government departments from the centre of London, move them into the regions, where that could create employment. Then we'd see a more level playing field.
Is that not a bit of a zero-sum game? If government employment moves from one part of the country to another, then we gain here in Grimsby as we employ more civil servants, but somewhere else in the country loses employment.
But my job as the leader of North East Links Council, it's not as a Prime Minister or anybody else. My job is to make sure that I get people here back into work, which is what we're trying to do. We've got a stubbornly high youth unemployment rate in this area. I've got to make sure there's jobs for those people, training for those people, and get them into work, because people who are in work are better off because they've got more disposable income, and B, they tend to be healthier.
And there's investment from Able and from Dong. What can you do to encourage these companies?
Well, we're out there meeting companies all the time, and we're going out again to meet some more companies. You know, we don't just sit behind a desk in the town hall. We get out there and speak to developers and investors. But we've got some other good news. We've got, like in Cleethorpes, the new hotel's going to start in the next couple of weeks. We've got a new hotel going to start in Grimsby soon. We've actually got a major announcement that's going to be done soon for the centre of Grimsby.
And what's that?
Well, I'm afraid I can't say that because that's still confidential, and the company that's behind it want to make the first announcement. But there's a big announcement going to be coming soon in Grimsby. But that's all been brought on, like they say, because they've now got confidence to invest in the area because they can see that regeneration is finally happening.
Talking of the centre of town and investment in the centre of town, an issue that I know agitates many people in Grimsby, the wonderful Prince of Wales Chequer herringbone effect new paving systems on Bethlehem Street outside the railway station and up and down Freeman Street. Was it really necessary?
Well, the thing about that is we have to bid for money now from central government, and one of the sums of money we can bid for is what they call LSTV. It's a funding bid for town centre improvements, traffic improvements. And we bid for that and we won it, and that's one of the things that they want us to do. They want us to look at invigorating town centres and invigorating our town centre. We had to look at the bus station, which was getting a bit old in the tooth, and quite frankly was actually a death trap itself waiting to happen. You've got buses coming from every direction. What we've done, we're making it a lot simpler and a lot easier. And for once, people in the winter won't have to sit in a drafty bus stop. They can actually sit in a proper bus station and wait for a bus and know when it's coming, what stand it's going to come on, how many minutes it's going to be. That also allows us to do some more investment in the town centre as well.
I mean, just specifically on this pattern, and the design has caused all sorts of controversy. Apparently, there are tales of people being given epilepsy by the checkered lighting. The black ones make people think there's a hole in the ground and they trip over and fall over it. And there's an issue with the loss of the curbs, which is unhelpful for elderly people and for guide dogs and things like that. I mean, those perhaps are very specific individual issues, and the pattern is a matter of taste, no doubt. But was it necessary? You applied for this money, but you applied for money to be spent on work where there was already a road, there was already a pavement, the functioning engineering was already present.
What we need to is at all times we need to maintain and do these things. So therefore, the idea was taken to do that and to lift up the town centre. Now, as far as the pattern goes and epileptic fits, we did check with the Epilepsy Society before we did it, and they actually assured us that they got no records of this happening. And as far as the shared spaces go, and if people look, the curbs are gone, but there are tactile paving. The paving with bumps and lumps on it to tell you that you're going onto a road. You know, but I appreciate it's going to be new for people. But these systems work elsewhere, and if they can work elsewhere in the country and they can work elsewhere on the continent, then I don't see why they can't work in Grimsby. You know, the people of Grimsby are one thing the people of Grimsby have told me, they're adaptable to change. Well, this is change, and with all kinds of change, not everybody's going to be happy with it. Some will be, some won't be, and what we have to do is give it a try and see if it works. You know, some of the responses we're getting some negative ones, like you say, which are the ones that are making the media, but we're also getting a lot from people who are saying, it's about time we saw something. We're fed up of seeing artists' impressions in the paper of things that might happen. At last we're seeing something actually happening.
Well, you mentioned comparisons with the continent there, and there's at the end of Freshney Place there, where the bus stop is now, as you say, pretty dangerous place. You take your life in your hands every time you cross the alleyways there, or the avenues there. Is that not a site ripe for a continental-style piazza? That's right by the river there, by the barge, the heart of historical Grimsby with its connection with the docks and with the sea, that open space, that green space. Is that really a place where you should have diesel engines trundling through? Is that not a place where people should gather for a communal space, a communal, quiet, peaceful space?
Well, that's what's happening with the bus station. The bus station has now moved into Victoria Street, which means that area is going to be there for development or whatever we need to do with it.
That development is going to be Debenhams rather than a public open space.
The speculation of it's going to be, I'm not going to say it's going to be, I can tell you now it's not Debenhams.
That's not your announcement.
That's not the announcement. As I can say, unfortunately, it's not Debenhams. My wife would love it to be Debenhams, but it's not Debenhams. But what it is, we are going to do something with the area, and there will be an announcement, you know, in due course. But one thing we've got to remember is that at all times you've got to look at what we've got, and as a town what we've got. You know, and when I go into Grimsby, I mean, I remember when we used to have YEB, we used to have the YEB in Cleethorpes. We don't have it there anymore. We don't have the YEB in Grimsby. We used to have lots of different shops, and things change. We need to change with it. We don't want to be the town that people forget about, and that's one thing we're adamant about, that there should always be developments happening. And you know, we've got quite a lot of developments happening at the moment. We've got plans for more and further development, which will bring more jobs and prosperity to the area, which is what we're all about.
You've been leader of the council for almost 3 years now. At the moment, you have very little choice because of an £80 million cut in the continuing budget, but to speak of cutting your coat to suit your pocket. You're cutting the size of the central administration, you're having to lose jobs, you're having to perhaps dip into your reserve resources, perhaps more than you'd feel comfortable doing, and your rhetoric, and I don't mean the word in any pejorative way, but your rhetoric is about saving money and meeting your costs. You're a Labour councillor, you're a socialist, you sound very much like Margaret Thatcher. Is this comfortable?
No, what it is, nobody comes into local government to cut, and that's the last thing we're doing. And what we're doing is, if you'll notice, we're not cutting frontline services. We're having to look at where we can take, as people have said in the past, you know, the fat out of local government. We're doing that by looking at different ways of delivering services. We're still delivering those services. Nobody came into I don't care what party you are, nobody comes into local government to cut services. But we have some unpopular decisions to make, because one thing we have to do is deliver a legal budget. That's a legal requirement of being an elected member.
And I must stop you there, Councillor Chris Shaw. Thank you very much for explaining that. And perhaps you'll come back and join us some other time.
I'd love to, Hugh.
For now, that's all we have time for this week on Hot Topic. Many thanks for watching us. I hope you'll join me the next time. Goodbye.